So we're back. Took a little bit of a hiatus there. Um, yeah, we're gonna kind of catch you up on what we've been doing in the meantime, um, which for me has been mostly online stuff. I haven't been working in a brick and mortar or anything like that, or in an office. But I've been doing a couple of Zoom type shows, if not exactly Zoom shows. One was back in September with One Ironaut. We did a 24-hour show in blocks of 3 hours, eight person teams per show, um, or thereabouts. Um, with multiple breakout rooms and lots of it was a mixed medium of pre-recorded and uh live things. So any of the pre-recorded stuff we did ourselves, we pre-produced that. um some was video, some was audio, some was both. um and then again, live elements with actors and everything on the day during the show. um that was when I found out that this computer here, I got a second computer, that's an update, um, does not handle Skype and OBS and Zoom well all at the same time. Um, Another update is that I've had to invest in my own modem router so that I can hardwire myself, uh, so that my internet doesn't go out in the middle of a show, because when you're the one who is pressing the buttons and running the entire thing, that's not good. um, but yeah, and then I've done a couple of corporate things here and there where it's been kind of they asked for show callers, but it was really mostly talent wrangling. Just texting people, making sure that they were good to go. Part of that is making sure that you can hear them and that you can see them, and that if they've got any kind of background, that they're wearing a fairly solid color. Um, that their windows are closed, their blinds are closed behind them, so that you don't get any backlight, because cameras don't like backlight without anything else around them. It makes you a shadow. Um, so yeah, those have been there have been 3 or 4 corporate events. And then I've done a couple of other Zoom things recently in the last couple of weeks with a company that I'm still working with right now. I'm working on their holiday show right now, where that's been just kind of scheduling everybody and popping into their rehearsals and everything. And I think the most similar thing that I'm still doing, that I would have been doing in an actual physical theater, is that like I said, there's scheduling people, um, and they're sending out reports, kind of, because there's not really lighting designers, and there's not sound designers per se. There's a graphic designer that they're working with, um, and the individual directors themselves, but it's more just sending, you know, kind of rehearsal notes to actors to say, like, here's what we would like for your costumes. Here's how we would like your camera setup or your lighting setup, because they're doing it themselves. They're their own one-man band or one-person show, on their end. And so it's asking a lot of everyone. We're not all doing what we used to do. I'm not taking blocking notes. I'm not tracking where props are coming off and on, because it's just they're holding it and then they're not. They're just putting it down next to them or something. um so it's different in that way. And like I said, even the reports themselves are not all that descriptive at this point, because they're not going to different departments. I'll tell the producers, um usually in a separate email, this is the estimated runtime read through that we did for this show, so that we can add it all together at the end to get it under 2 hours. But it's really sitting there kind of listening in and having your camera off and having your microphone muted while actors are doing what they're doing, and directors are giving direction and everything, and then kind of chiming in when you're needed. But yeah, there's a couple things where, I'm trying to figure out an actor situation where nobody knew that he had actually not confirmed, because I get the information after everyone has confirmed, assuming that they have. So it's figuring out his schedule and working into rehearsals and whatnot. Figuring out script changes if need be, because they're mostly all new works that are being put out. Um, so yeah, like I said, script changes are happening pretty quickly if they need to. So you're getting a lot of drafts from the writers, and just making sure that everyone has the most current one, including yourself, because that doesn't always happen. That sometimes gets lost in the deluge of emails that it's all taking place via email now. It's there's not a whole lot of in person or over the phone even, um to speak of. I've had a couple of phone calls, but not a whole lot. Meetings that would have taken place maybe after rehearsal, like at a coffee shop or something, are now not. They're all in emails. And when a festival has 6 or 7 shows, filing those accordingly is very important. My emails kind of break down. I have a festival email, and then I have each show in the festival has their own folder as well, to try to catalog it as best as I can. And then the other, big development here at this house is I have a new niece now. So she just turned a month old on December 3rd. So it's navigating her too. She's talking downstairs right now. I think it's about second breakfast time, I think, is what we're calling it. So yeah, her with all the dogs and my entire family, all under one roof. It's something. It's happening. So yeah, I'm gonna turn it over to Lizzie now, because that's pretty much where I'm at now.
Thanks, Taylor. Good morning, everyone. So I can't remember, because it's been a minute since we've done the webinar, if I had gotten my real estate license. I had by the time we took it. Yes. So right at the time we took our hiatus, I became a real estate agent. And I am now an agent with Daniel Gale Sotheby's International, which, if you know Sotheby's, they're the big auction house, big famous auction house. So they're a great company to work for. I love my colleagues. I love my office. I've learned so much about that business and myself just over the course of now 3 months. But I love it, and I love that I can use my SM skills, my theater skills, and my psychology skills in that profession. I'm about to get my first commission soon, so I'm excited about that. And if anyone knows anyone selling or buying on Long Island or New York or anywhere, because I can make referrals anywhere in the world with Sotheby's, let me know. Elizabeth Strauss at danielgale.com. That's my plug. On top of, I'm allowed to plug. And we are also in the midst of planning our 7th Broadway Stage Management Symposium. It'll be virtual next May. It'll be over 4 days. So May 21st to 24th, if you have any questions about that, BroadwaySymposium.com. We're excited to do that next year. I have also been contracted with a Chicago theater company, to write 2 audio dramas that will be launching next summer. So anywhere you can listen to a podcast, you'll be able to listen to my audio plays, which I'm excited about. Also in 2021, because I have met so many other artists and so many other theater artists who are now in real estate. We're going to be launching a Broadway Brokers Network. So keep an eye out for that. Any artists who work in real estate, it'll be a good platform to connect on. And just something recently that a couple friends have said to me, that maybe one day I'll run for political office. Not sure yet, but that is something brewing in the back of my brain. Maybe in about a decade, got to get my feet a little more wet with the political activism. But I'm excited to see where that journey takes me years from now. Um, but learning a lot about myself, continuing working in many different fields. I'm excited to be back with these ladies on this webinar because I've really missed them and talking about what we do and what we love and what we're so passionate about. And now I'm going to turn it to Lisa to talk about what she's doing.
Thanks, Lizzie. I'm excited to be back too. All of us have been busy in our different areas. Since we last were together, I have gone back to my educational roots. I am working as a proctor, is what the school refers to it as, for a private school near my apartment here in the Bronx. So my job is to be the physical person in the classroom while the teacher that I work with, who is high risk medically, is teaching remotely from home. So I go in, I turn on the technology. We use Google Education Suite, so we use Google Meet. So I turn on the Google Meet, I check to make sure that the mic is working and that there's not feedback through the speakers, a lot of those stage management skills being used. And then I facilitate the class. I make sure that the kids are keeping their masks on, they're staying 6 feet apart, they're disinfecting their area when they leave the classroom. I volunteered because I was bored out of my mind to also help the teacher in that most of her classes are junior senior classes, and there's a lot of discussion that goes on in the classroom. And so the first week I was working with her, I noticed she was typing a lot of what the students were saying in the chat. And I said to her, that sounds like that's a lot of responsibility for you to try to keep up with them visually and listening to what they're saying and typing at the same time. Why don't you let me type in the chat? So that's what I do in class every day. Once everything gets started, I type what the students are saying in discussion into the chat, and then we literally copy and paste that into notes that we have as the two teachers and that the kids have to refer back to if they want to. So I've been using those stage management skills there in the classroom. The teacher that I work with is an English teacher, which is great. So we've already covered, for example, Antigone. So when we covered Antigone, she was like, great, you're a theater person, contribute whatever you want. And she allows me to do that. So that's been a joy, and I really love working with those students. It's a little unnerving being back in a physical space. The COVID protocols that we go through, we have to wear a mask all the time. As I said, the kids have to disinfect their desk and their area that they're in. We have to make sure constantly to remind them, because they're young people and they're used to walking up and hugging their friends or, high-fiving, that they can't do that. So we have to constantly remind them to stay, separate, socially distanced. We do have COVID testing every week that is free to us and to the students. And we started out remote in September. We worked our way back in the first 2 weeks at 25%. And then over a couple of days, and then we went to 50% of the student body being there. We will not have more than that for the entire school year. We were fully on campus, 50% capacity for 3 weeks. And then we went remote for the last 2 weeks before Thanksgiving break, and then had a week off at Thanksgiving. So we just had our first full week back. Fingers crossed. Testing was done on Friday. Takes about 48 hours. So I'm waiting to see what I hear tonight as to whether we are back tomorrow on campus or we are remote again. The school is very determined to take 2 weeks remote off when they need to, and then try to be back in the building. So that job hopefully will continue for me into next June, which is great at this point. I've also started an Etsy shop with my crafts. So I'm doing that on the side, making flannel and fleece blankets. My mother is thrilled. That's her second Christmas present. She already got one earlier, so she was like, I want another one. So I've been working on that. I did do one Zoom play reading earlier in November. And a lot of the things that Taylor talked about earlier, you're using those stage management skills in a different way. I've had to learn a lot more technology. Yes, you suddenly learn what your computer is capable of and what it's not capable of. And you're suddenly buying things that you were like, I never thought I'd have to use this. So that has been something that I've done. That particular reading, we did a lot of pre-recording. So I spent a lot of time tracking when we recorded scenes because we had a full day to record and then it was broadcast a week later. But because of only having one day, our director was very concerned about what we were going to, what would happen if we were recording and had an issue. So we pre-recorded every scene, so we would have that as a backup, which ended up being a good thing because the night we were recording, we had our playwright and one of our lead actors in Los Angeles, and the power went out. So we had to stop the scene we were in, and I'm on texting the actor, our director's texting the playwright, who they only happened to live 2 blocks apart, strangely enough, trying to figure out what was going on. Thankfully, the actor got power back after about 30 minutes. The playwright did not. He phoned in the rest of the time on and used his Wi-Fi that way. And then, but we were able to continue recording, thankfully, because we had the actor. The playwright was not such a big deal. But obviously, those things can happen. So it was a good thing we had pre-recorded scenes in case we needed them to be able to use as backup. But I did a lot more tracking of, you know, timestamps and where things were and what worked and what didn't. And a lot of that technology that you're checking, again, yeah, you're trying to figure out, you may have something that your computer is capable of, but another actor may not. So you're constantly checking to see what are the best settings that you can get. So the overall production looks great, but you're working with those limitations. You can't ask an actor to go out and just grab something. It doesn't work that way. So that those stage manager skills you're still using, it's just in a different capacity. I found that my time was just as full as if I were in a brick and mortar theater. It's just in a different way. As Taylor pointed out, you're not going to the coffee shop to have that production meeting. You're staying on afterwards on Zoom and having that production meeting, or you're having a lot more email communication to get those things taken care of. So that's my experience with the Zoom play reading world. And I've taken some of that experience and have been helping my son's girlfriend has a nonprofit theater company that she started. And they've been doing some play readings as well. So I've been offering advice and helping her out whenever I can there. The last thing I've been doing is something that I did pre-COVID, but has really taken on a different edge. And that is on a personal note, it's a caretaker. My mother is in a nursing home, has been in a nursing home for about 18 months now. My father, who turned 80 this summer, is living at home alone. And my father is a typical mid 20th century man who really didn't know how to cook on his own and never did the grocery shopping, never paid the bills. So in this COVID time, I have had to, over Zoom, over the phone, teach my father to online shop and help my father pay bills and track those bills, as well as track what's going on in the nursing home, which has been locked down since March 13th. So my father is not able to see my mother. So I'm being the good daughter as much as I can and trying to keep my father, who is obviously depressed and misses my mother very much, in a positive light, trying to keep him safe and reminding him of what he should and shouldn't do in terms of COVID, but also doing a lot of online paying bills, setting up auto pay for a lot of my parents' bills, working with the nursing home, tracking what is happening with my mother and making sure that she's taken care of. So a lot of that is difficult when you're long distance, but in this age of COVID, it's something that most of us are now learning to do long distance. Everybody's having to adapt. And that takes up a large amount of my time. If you're a parent, you have young children, it's kind of the same thing. It's just on the opposite end. So something that we all have to do at some point in our lives, but I spend a part of every single day talking to my parents, as well as working through where we are and what needs to be taken care of. So that has been my life for the last few months, and I'll turn it over to Ingrid so she can tell you what has been happening with her life.
Thank you. So I guess I've been probably the most out and about of the four of us. Still working in retail, still working in guest service, mainly dealing with the delivery portion of a major boom, online orders. So I deal with curbside pickup. So when people come to the store for curbside pickup, I'm pretty much always taking it out, orders out through their cars. Um, Before it was there'd be occasionally I'd be scheduled somewhere else, but now it's completely that. So I'm getting a lot of steps in. Yep. Yeah, definitely over 10,000 every single shift, which is yay because gyms are closed. Um, so seeing how that demand has skyrocketed during this time has been fascinating, and how people view etiquette using that service is often a thing I talk about. With that, the stage management skills, it's always the thinking on the feet, reacting, problem solving, because we've also had a lot of new employees in the store, due to called seasonal employees, to meet the demand of the skyrocketing, and sometimes they aren't quite as up to following, or they don't always follow exactly like the protocols they're supposed to do to help us. So sometimes an item is not where it's supposed to be, and you end up troubleshooting on the fly with a time limit, or with a time expectation. I remember on Friday, because I have the weekend off right now, I was supposed to get an item and go to a specific location. The item was a car seat. The location was about the size of a cell phone. That wasn't there, so it's finding it. Luckily, we had another one, getting it to the client, but also reporting that to chain of command, so we know, like, hey, don't do that, to give help with the feedback process. So there's been a lot of that. There's been just managing space with the customer guest service area and the organization demand there. So it's really a lot of the ASM skills of just being hands-on, and space, and almost cues in a way, and being prepared for them, even though you don't know what cues are going to come when. So kind of like events, but very freeform improv kind of events. Um, Things like that. I did have to be in quarantine for 2 weeks, not due to anything in the store, but due to a close contact in my personal life. So going from constantly working to having to stop for 2 weeks and then go right back into working the week of Thanksgiving, that was a huge like physical readjustment, and being able to take care of my body with that, because my body was like, you haven't done this in a while, and it really showed. So taking care of myself with that ended up being a major demand of those days. Other things that have happened, one that came close, I was actually, over the past 2 years, I've worked with the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade with operations dealing with costumes. I was actually slated to do that again, as you might have heard, those spread out over a couple of days, some pre-recorded, some live, due to what I thought my work schedule was going to be. I was supposed to be on the live day, but of course cases spiked. They cut staff in half, so that did not happen, because I was not available for the entire time, most likely. Um, did not end up doing that, which ended up being good, because that was my only day off that week, because there was a lot of overtime at the store that week. Other thing in person, I've helped an on and off again employer wrap up something that we were actually supposed to do right around when everything shut down in March, just like close that out during October. So it was interesting being meaningfully in the city, doing some tasks, and just like seeing that wrap up for a little bit, because literally we were about to start loading things up to go do an event when I got a call saying, hey, stop, this is not happening either, like a day after the theatrical shutdown. And then also recertifying in first aid, CPR, and AED, because still going to be necessary, lasts for 2 years. Despite all of this, like being out and about, that's been like a main portion of my time. the rest of the time I am mostly in this room. Really don't leave the house. If I do leave the house, I'm still masking. I know at the store we're always masking. It stepped up to gloves, which for all employees, which kind of reduces the incentive to touch your face. You really don't want to. Plus, you have a little bit more precaution if for some reason you don't get to washing your hands or sanitizing your hands because you have to take those off to eat. We definitely had changes in our break situation for when we do eat because there are still some shifts where you have to take a meal break and you don't want to go anywhere else. But yeah, definitely being cautious with that, testing as much as I can, which tends to be every month. Antibody testing when I can, like donating blood, so still showing up negative in all things, luckily. I'm trying to be very safe and cautious and not socializing or being out of the house besides actually working. So that's been a very interesting thing and to tackle and handle as cases are skyrocketing, especially well everywhere in the country, but even here in the New Jersey, New York area. Yeah. So that's what I've been up to for the past 3 months.
God, I also got my COVID compliance officer certification. So
Yeah, that's next on my list.
it's a pretty easy class, I would say.
Oh yeah, definitely got that earlier in the pandemic before we went on hiatus, but still have not used it because I've been working in a job and like there are some benefits. I like just keep working on the job until I can find something that would have more benefits. Because healthcare is important. Need to figure out getting that and steady paycheck is important.
Yeah, I haven't used mine because I have a newborn at home. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's where we are at the moment. um, yeah.
I can't wait to be for like things to start slowing down case wise and actually being able to go out and about even with masks like
Yeah.
socially.
It's
Yeah.
what is it? Is it Australia? I think has no, no cases, no new cases and stuff like that. So I think it was Natalie Portman's working there now, and she was like, it's like going back in time.
Probably
Because
New Zealand. Probably
maybe
New Zealand.
it was
Yeah.
New Zealand.
Australia's been battling with it and they've definitely been back and forth on restrictions
Yeah,
and certainly slowing the spread, but New Zealand, I believe it's the one who is like stopped it, which makes sense with filming because they are one of the ideal filming
yep.
locations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Female
Uh,
leaders get things done.
so in conclusion, wear a mask and get a vaccine when it comes out
Please.
so that the
Yeah.
four of us can go back to work, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
um
Definitely
yeah,
missing hugs right now.
yeah,
Oh, I miss
and
hugs so much.
people
It's
and
interesting with my students talk a lot about that at school that when they watch television, they watch a movie or something, that they are now so sensitized to wearing a mask and not hugging and not touching, that when they see people do that, things that were filmed obviously pre-COVID, that they get very anxious and they want to speak to the TV and tell them, don't do that, that's not safe. And there's been a lot of discussion about, is normal going to be normal again? So it's going to be very interesting, I think, to see how we transition at some point once vaccines get out there in a wider area and things start to move back in that direction, how that does move back. Will there ever be normal again?
yeah, I mean, I'm not quite there of yelling at my TV yet, but I will say, like, watching like a theater vlog or something like that is hard. It's really hard because they're doing was it Les Mis in concert in out in the West End,
Yeah.
because they were able to get their stuff together at least that much to be able to do that, and they're all getting tested, and they were getting tested and stuff, and I think they were doing like every other day testing. So watching anyone's you know, videos from that, I'm like, oh, come on, guys. Like,
It's even more interesting because actually last night was the reopening of the first production in like full production in London.
mm,
Six the musical reopened
yeah,
last night. So of
yeah,
course they have the thing where in the UK they're allowed to film what they call the Mega Six at the end. So you see the videos. They're in a larger theater than they're used to, so they allow for more social distancing. They have the band on stage, but you see the people in the band who will never have to speak. They're wearing masks on stage. The rest, I'm sure there's some sort of strict COVID testing,
yeah,
so that they're definitely not staying 6 feet apart, but they probably have other precautions.
right.
And interestingly, the night before, their tour production was actually supposed to reopen as well, but the region that the tour was supposed to reopen is in a tier 3 restriction, so the highest restriction, whereas London's in a tier 2.
Hmm.
So the tour could not reopen. They rehearsed at the same time as the other show, but couldn't reopen, whereas the London one could. So it's
Yeah,
interesting seeing even in that nation what's happening
yeah,
with
And it
the
speaks to how much we have, a global economy, a global world now that, we can't do things like that because this is a pandemic that's a world pandemic. So if it's worse in one place than it is in another, it restricts what can be done for everyone.
yeah. And we're not even talking about,
right?
yeah, Broadway is very much a tourist attraction. Locals obviously do go and work there, but not even them. It's just like, you know, I work at theaters here on Long Island. Um, so, and yes, they're on college campuses, so sometimes the students are going home for holidays or what have you. But it's not necessarily them. It's everyone around. And it's like, all right, well, you all need to get it together so that we can give you a show, so that people can come here to New York to do their concerts or their, you know, whatever's comedy shows. It varies, depends on who had been booked. Um, the one venue that I mainly work at, just so happened it was being redone this year anyway, so it would have been closed for a while, but um, and I was in doing a couple of things there, um, just moving stuff out of the way so that those that were doing the you know, redoing everything could actually do like the painting and take down the band shell, because we had a permanent band shell for years, which was a pain in the butt when it came to like the Broadway shows and stuff like that coming through. Um, but that got taken down, so you know, that things like that. So some people did get to go to work during this, which is nice. But it's weird, you know, not being in there for months and then going in and there's no seats anymore and it's a different color and, and nothing is where we left it. Yeah, it's funny because like we have pictures of what the space looks like the last time we were there, which even that was weeks ago at this point. But our side rooms, where, you know, our storage rooms, are terrifying right now. There's just so much in there. Because we just had to get rid of, like,
Yeah.
all the lights had to come down, everything had to move. We just had to get it out of the way, because like I said, all the seats are being there's new seating going in, so you can't even keep it in the house. Like, you know, the walls were being repainted, so we had to move it from everywhere. It just, yeah. So yeah, that was another thing that I did.
Yeah, the
for a
high
little
school
while.
I taught in for many years in North Carolina, it's finally, because it's public school, it takes forever to get money. It's finally getting renovations done to the auditorium. And so my good friend who is the band director is like, all the work that you did is now paying off. You're just not here.
Yeah.
So he's been going in. And every couple of weeks, I get pictures where he's gone in and he asks for a hard hat and he goes in and he takes pictures of what has been happening. So, yeah, the seats came out and the walls got repainted and the booth got rebuilt and new lights are being added. So he's been keeping me up to date. He's like, I figure you worked hard enough to get the funding for it. Even though you're not here, you should see this. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. But this past week at the school that I'm currently at, I actually got to go in the auditorium for the very first time,
Mm,
which was really like being a kid in a candy store. I was like,
yeah.
oh, cool, being back in auditorium. And I
Yeah.
literally was in there
It's different.
supervising children because that's one of the indoor spaces we use for lunch where we can socially distance.
Yeah.
But I'm like looking at the lighting and I'm looking where the booth is and how many spotlights they have.
Yeah.
So it was a nice
Super
little
Troopers. I never thought I'd miss a Super Trooper, but I miss those things.
yeah.
They were not in good condition when we left. So
I do try to think about like the first theater I'm going to go back into when I can again. And I think about, is it going to be off Broadway? Is it going to be Broadway? Is it going to be a regional? I don't know. But
I can tell you I got very giddy this week just being back in a theater space.
yeah.
So I think for many of us, there's going to be that heightened emotion, and that I have this feeling that for me personally, there's going to be almost an overwhelming sense of emotion, of joy, of being able to be back in a rehearsal room or in a theater space and getting back to work.
Well, and it's going to be a different experience as, working there and then being an audience member for the first time too.
Yes.
I'm expecting this, like the first time a Broadway or off Broadway show has its first curtain go up, there's just going to be a moment of just emotional release that we're going to include everyone, the actors, the audience, the crew, the stage managers, the company managers. I'm expecting that. I'm going to be, I'm overly emotional anyway, because my zodiac sign is a Cancer, but it'll be just the floodgates will be open.
The longest entrance applause ever.
I mean, I hope so. It'll be like the one entrance applause everyone's okay with, though. I know some people don't love that, but I think everyone will be happy with it.
It's funny because one of an actress that Ingrid and I have both worked with, she did a show recently. I forget which theater was she at? Do you remember?
I just remember the fact that it was like a one-person review. I don't remember the theater.
Yeah, she did a one-woman show about Doris Day, and it was her and the piano player. And so she had like it was a reading. She had a iPad or something instead of a book. And then the piano player was masked and everything. So he was masked, she was not. But she got to do it in an actual theater and have like costumes and wigs and things like that, and she was posting about it, and I was like, take pictures so I don't forget what a theater looks like on the inside.
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought I'd say like I miss like the little hole in the wall theaters, but I do. I mean, and just having to fix things with gaff. Like I fixed something the other day with gaff tape, and it felt good.
I just can't wait until producers mainly realize that they can no longer cram 7 people in a 3-person dressing room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
that'd be interesting.
And the other day,
makes a lot of change with that. Yes.
I mean, I will say it's hard to talk about theater sometimes for me. That like some of the brokers will be like, I miss seeing live productions. I can't imagine what it's like for you. And I'm like,
you're like, I miss doing them.
I miss just like the feel of the soundboard and the mixer and just the curtains and like the hard concrete. I mean, I think I worked in the financial district where it was just like a cement floor, but
yeah,
it was still theater.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because like it's the moment before the house opens when you're kind of just standing on stage, just checking the last little bits and pieces, and then you hand it over. Like, all right, we're good to go. I had a guy that I worked with at News 12. Actually, he was a stage manager too before he went to television. And his favorite thing to do, when the curtain was down, audience could be in the house already at that point, but he just liked to have his little walk across the stage while the curtain was down, just upstage of the curtain, and that was his, moment to get into the show. So. Yeah, it'll be nice to go back to that someday.
Yeah, we'll be back. We just have to be patient.
Yeah, it's like the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's also the dark time because
Because you don't know how long the tunnel is.
Don't know how long the
We
tunnel
don't.
is.
Great way to put it. Yeah.
Don't know how long the tunnel is. We're still dealing with the unknown of like how bad is this going to get right now. I was actually I look at data every morning when I wake up if I'm not doing a morning shift to see like what it was yesterday and just seeing what's happening right now. It's interesting and just trying to be like. Plus the daylight is much shorter, so that's hard too. There's like the waiting until a vaccine approval, which I'm sure all of us are assuming is happening this week. But that's going to suck if it doesn't. I know.
Crossing all
Um,
sanitized
yeah.
fingers.
Yep. Waiting for that. Waiting to see how the rollout happens. Waiting to see if anyone travels for Christmas, especially seeing what we're seeing after Thanksgiving. And like,
And then
I'm sure the Christmas travel is harder than not traveling for Christmas is a lot harder than not traveling for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I
well,
will say
also,
that we had that discussion this week as the teachers that I work with, because we were told by the headmaster of the school, you know, do what you have to do at Thanksgiving or at Christmas, but obviously if you travel and you go out of state, you have to follow the New York guidelines, and it means quarantining. And if you're currently teaching in the classroom, it means somebody covering for you if you're out for 2 weeks. Um, and there was a lot of tears. There are a lot of frustration and a lot of tears, especially for teachers who are, saying, I can't, I can't leave the state because it means I have to quarantine and I need my job. But parents can choose to keep their kids out of school in quarantine and they can go. And so there's a lot of inequity to what is happening as well, that I think heightens that frustration and that
that's also
emotion.
though, like, people in the entertainment industry have dealt with that anytime that they've worked,
Yeah.
is that, and I'm not, I'm not saying it's easy. It's not easy, especially when it's new to you, when it's a new concept that no, I can't go home or I can't go see whoever I wanted to go see for a holiday or a birthday or anything else. Um, it's you know
I know
that part we were used to.
I know I'm
Yeah.
so used to not going home for Thanksgiving.
Too.
Like it's pretty much, at least with my family now, it's assumed I'm not going home for Thanksgiving unless I tell them I am. But even last year, where I was in the middle of one show performing, one show rehearsing, at weird schedules, still managed to get home for a couple of days, drove back on Christmas to get back up here for a performance the next day, and made it work. So that's more like a I have to opt out versus opt in type thing. So that's
Yeah.
still kind of a little weird.
Yeah, I think for us in the entertainment business, this not being able to travel at the holidays is a little easier because we're so used to not doing it in the first place. I think
Yeah.
for people that have never had to think about it, it's very difficult to suddenly have to be faced with that choice that they've never had before. And I know in some of the discussions I've had with some of the teachers I'm working with, when they voice that frustration, I'm like, that's my life. I'm used to that. I'm used to
Yeah.
being able
Well,
to.
it's more, if you think about it, for us, like, a teacher or someone who works in a regular office or something like that, they're more, it's easier for them to at least consider taking a sick day than it is for, we have the opposite thing where, like, we don't, if you call out, the show may not happen.
Well, and
or
unfortunately, in this time, it's
something.
that way too in education, because I can tell you we have a lot of teachers at the school I work at that are teaching remotely from home. And so, like for myself as a proctor, that's my job. I have to physically be there. So if I were to choose to go home to North Carolina, which would then put me, when I come back, into 2 weeks of quarantine, I would lose my job because my job is to physically be there. And so, for the teachers that are not teaching remotely, who are in the classroom, the idea of having to go on quarantine for 2 weeks and risk not having a substitute, or scrambling to find a substitute in this time period where it's difficult to find people who are willing to go physically into a classroom, is even more stressful, because they're like, I want to take the time, but I can't, because there's this whole domino effect of what happens and what you need from everybody else. So that adds to their stress as well.
Things that they're learning from what we've dealt with
Yeah,
before.
like, this is my life.
Yeah, the whole, like, can't try to power through it anymore after all of this because
But I will say, I think the good thing for some of us is, I know I have many friends, actors, stage managers, etc., who through this pandemic have been forced to go home for financial reasons. They've left the city, and so they are with family.
Yeah.
Maybe for the first time in a long time here at the holidays. So maybe there's an upside in that particular aspect.
Yep. I think that about wraps us too. So, like I said before, in conclusion, wear a mask.
Yeah, please wear a mask.
Stay at home
Mask up.
and get vaccinated when that happens, please.
Yes.
Yes.
And we'll let you know when we're back again. See you later.